suppose so.
Oh dear, she supposes so. So we're ready and we're recording. We are absolutely going to stop this one. Is this number 10, Angela? I think this is number 10.
I think so.
My goodness, 10 months we've been at this. And we're still no further forward. Anyway, going round in circles. We have a new member. We have Vicky here. Hi, Vicky.
Hello.
Now, just very quickly, tell us what you do.
So I'm a NLP and hypnotherapy trained coach, and I work with women in mindset blockages and transformational, just to get onto their path of what it is that they're wanting to do.
So you bring us very, very quickly and very beautifully into what the subject is today, which is empowerment.
Yeah. So I thought it was very convenient whenever I seen the message come through, and I thought, okay, I'll see about popping onto this one.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that it gets bandied about quite a lot. But what is it exactly? Now, I did look it up, and I know that Angela's going to be listening to this very carefully. So, the process of becoming stronger and more confident. No, that's the wrong one. Yes, it is.
Is,
Authority or
is
power
that the word
given.
above?
That's the one above. The empowerment. It's authority or power given to someone to do something, or the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. Now, according to the famous browser person, there are 5 types: educational, economic, political, and psychological. But for me, there's another one: spiritual. So the skills come into life coping skills, manipulative skills, intellectual skills, communicative skills, artistic skills, and for me, just me probably, the imaginal ones. All natural skills which every organism, including man, wow, acquires from birth to adapt, getting into his or her environment, fitting into his or her environment. Now that's interesting. It's an interesting way to put it.
Well, I would say that it's likely that you're going to develop skills from birth.
Yes.
So I'll agree on that point. Sorry.
No, honestly. It's like, yeah, I mean, the way that it says that every organism, okay, organisms, they all have their own genetic coding to do things. How many of them are manipulative? Maybe all of them. But that's giving it a power that we're not going to talk about. We're going to talk about the empowerment of us, of becoming who we can be. Oh, Dave's popped out again. And basically, more about what it is that we feel the need sometimes to be empowered or we feel disempowered. How do we know which one is there until we actually get stuck in a corner, perhaps? Victoria, what do
Yes.
you think about empowerment? What does it mean to you?
I think to me it's being able to give yourself or somebody else a voice, like to be heard. And I think that comes to mind because I'm reading a book at the moment about child's voice and arts therapies because I am an arts therapist. And it is a new book, and one of my tutors is actually an author on it as well. So it really does interest me. It only came out last year. And it does talk about the fact that, especially with children, when you're giving therapy to children, a lot of the decisions are just over, like, their input is overlooked. And that's what a lot of them have said as well, like, particularly in, say, like child and adolescent mental health meetings, a lot of them would sit there with a group of professionals talking about their care, and they've got no say at all in it whatsoever. So that empowerment's been taken away from them. And that's just such a big thing to me because I want to work with children. So yeah, like giving somebody a voice, and I think as therapists or life coaches, etc., that's what we do. Maybe not everybody agrees there, but that's part of my practice. I like to empower people to have a voice.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it tops and tails because I think when you get
Mm.
to the older end of the scale,
Mm.
tend to get overlooked in the same way.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're in hospitals, where they have the most annoying habit of talking about you at the end of your bed.
Mm.
And if
Or
they, put the,
yeah.
if they put the green drape around you, you're in a sound booth.
Mm.
You can't hear a thing they're saying. You're on mute. They're on mute. So
Yeah.
What about
And
you,
even people
Angela?
that are sorry.
No, on you go.
I was just going to say as well, like even people that are non-verbal as well, like they might get overlooked as well. So
yeah. There's a whole way, so many ways of losing your power that way. Angela?
I think it's very valid that a lot of children are overlooked from having an opinion and a voice, and at the other end of the scale, the older people that are possibly getting to that point where their children have now grown up and become adults, and the control feels as if it's gone from them as well. But I think there's also that aspect that regardless of what age you are and what walk of life you're in, you need to take your own power if you want to do something and progress. So there could be situations where people are in work environments and they feel as if they've got no power. And in relationships where they've got no power. I think it covers all of life. And I think it's one of those ones that sometimes you don't realize you've lost your power. And it's about finding it again and finding your own 2 feet and being able to stand up and say, I'm here. And I do actually have an opinion and a voice, and feeling safe to do so. So I think it's one of those things. I assume most therapists do want to empower their clients to actually take control of their lives and be themselves in the best way they possibly can be.
Yeah. Vicky, what do you reckon?
I completely agree with both Victoria and Angela. They're both absolutely spot on there. Exactly what Angela said is that it's every aspect of your life. It's wherever you're not feeling that you can fully express yourself in your truth and your authenticity. That's where it is that you are disempowered, and that's where it is that you're looking to empower. So it shows up everywhere, in every stage, definitely.
Sue.
So I once came from a very disempowered, unempowered place, and I think as human beings, we quite often just abandon ourselves, and we don't always realize that we've abandoned ourselves until one day we might wake up and go, oh, where did I go? What happened to me? So I think we quite often, not only can we disempower other people, but we can disempower ourselves or get caught up in situations where we lose our own belief, our own power, and just abandon who we truly are. So I think it's having kind of lived it, it's something that I'm really passionate about, and obviously from a therapist point of view, that should be the core of what we are doing, is to empower other people to take responsibility, to be responsible for their lives, whether it's their health, their well-being, their physical lives, whatever it is. I think surely that's what we're there to do, is to empower ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Dave?
I think the empowerment has always struck me as something that is a natural product when certain other components are in place. And when they're missing, empowerment can't exist. And for me, as a professional coach and as someone that supports the therapeutic sector, 2 of the biggest components in achieving empowerment are always self-confidence and self-worth. And if those 2 elements are not in connection with each other, at least, then empowerment disintegrates around them, and there is a disconnect to the world that they're in. And that self-abandonment, if you like, as Sue was saying, is something that naturally then takes place, and it reinforces the disconnect between self-confidence and self-worth. And it becomes a vicious cycle that the rest of the world around a person then sees that lack of empowerment sees that lack of self-confidence and self-worth, and then can take advantage of the gaps that there are in that individual's presentation and connection.
So when we discover in ourselves, what do we do? I mean, I've got a good idea of what is coming here, but what do we do if we're feeling a bit disempowered? Because there are times and places and people who can actually kind of put a slow puncture in your tire when it comes to empowerment. So what do we do to keep that going, to re-inflate? Angela?
So after I've had a tantrum and I've stormed off in a huff, do you know, it's a really difficult one, because I think it so depends on the situation that you're in. And sometimes I myself have found myself in that proper, I really want to have a stop here. I want to just really tell that person that I feel is taken my power exactly what I think of them. And then I usually think again and think that's probably not the best way of going about it. And I think it's just about being true to yourself in whatever shape or form that needs to be at the time.
Vicky?
It's very. It definitely, I think that it can come in small wins, you know, like I think sometimes empowerment, you can think as though like it's this big glorious thing that you're going to feel absolutely glorious at the end of it, you know, where in actual fact, sometimes that there isn't the case. And just as a small example, the other day, there was a lot of pressure on me to get the work done, and I was absolutely hating it. And I found that that spiral starts to come in, and the empowerment was just recognizing what was happening, taking a step back, taking that breath, taking that moment, and just being like, do you know what? It's okay to not be okay. And that's empowerment, you know, for me, that's empowerment, because I'm empowered in myself to accept what it is that's going on in the situation, you know. So I think it's the small wins in between as well, and recognizing and acknowledging yourself. For me, everything comes back to expression. That's definitely one of the highest values, you know, and being able to feel empowered is the expression of whatever it is that's going on. And I feel that provided that you can express yourself, and even if you do go batshit crazy at somebody, you can always go back and apologize. Like that's all right, provided that you don't actually hurt anybody, it's okay. But yeah, I think, full expression, go for it. That's what I love.
Sue?
So it's interesting that Vicky mentioned about expression being one of the highest values, and I think not many people actually know what their values are, and so learning to connect with your values is really empowering, because then you can kind of go, oh, okay, that's why I'm offended by this person or what they've said or what they've done, is because it's you know, they've got different values to me, and this is kind of stamped all over one of my fundamental core values, and that's why I'm feeling hurt. And then we can take responsibility for our own reaction. And I think for me, it's always about looking within, like, okay, so what's this brought up in me? What's this set off in me? Why am I reacting in this way? And also taking responsibility for allowing things to happen. So when I was in a very controlling relationship, which is when I kind of completely abandoned myself, I was able to look back afterwards and kind of go, on some level, I let that happen. Not consciously, but on a level I did allow that to happen. So I think there's so many different facets, but I think sort of starting off with your values and knowing what your values are is a really good first step to kind of regaining that sense of confidence and empowerment.
It's that connection to self, that awareness of self, and what are the building blocks that have either been depleted or kicked out because of the experiences of life around you. And when you know what those components are and you can work on them, even if you're working on them, as Vicky said, you're having little small wins about connecting with yourself. That is loading up that empowerment gauge as you go. And people notice your empowerment going up. They don't notice that it's your self-confidence going up, or your self-worth, or your self-respect, or all of these little component parts. They see the empowerment growing. And when we see somebody who is growing, they're clawing their way back, as it were, to use a visualization, they're kind of growing. A lot of people that don't like that, they don't want that person to be that empowered. They don't want them to be that strong, confident person. They really show themselves. And then you start seeing who are the people around you for where they want you to be in their circle.
Yeah, it's kind of like bursting their balloon, isn't it? It's like that. Some people have got this invisible pin that they have. They just wait for the balloon to go in. Oh, you think you're going to do that? Bang. So, Victoria, what do you think?
Yeah, just hearing everybody speak there in terms of, empowerment being taken away. Like, the one thing I can talk about is I remember year changed, and before I came to the conclusion I wanted to go into drama therapy, I took a job in a call center just to get some income until I figured out who I was and what I wanted to be. And I think I got so sucked into that job for a long time. I stayed in it for far too long. And it came to a point where I was getting really fed up of people being really rude on the phone. And people would just swear at me because they didn't pay their bills on time. And, they'd call me every name under the sun, even though I was being very polite and honest. Part of me is thinking, hang on, I don't get paid enough to be spoken to like that, and I'm why am I putting up with this? So there would be that moment of, okay, if you continue speaking to me, I'm going to hang up the phone, because we don't accept people speaking to us like that. And that's what I would do. And as soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, like, I'm not putting up with this. Like, that was my empowerment coming back a little bit. But it also made me realize, actually, like, I've lost a bit of myself, like what Sue was saying, and I thought, okay, this is a time I need to just take a break. And I got signed off for 3 weeks, and I went and figured out what I wanted to do. And then I came back and was like, yeah, like, this is what I want to do, and this is my notice, and I'm leaving. So yeah, sometimes, like, even though it's probably quite trivial and it was a past life, but yeah, like, that was a moment that I can talk about. And it's also just been okay with just being with that emotion of, okay, this feels really horrible at the moment. And not just feeling like, okay, just stay positive. Like, you don't have to just stay positive. You can sit with that emotion of frustration or anger. Like, it's okay to sit with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of people think, particularly with spiritual people, that they have to be positive all the time. It'd be bloody tiring to be positive all the time.
How can you experience the positivity if you've not experienced the negativity? How are you going to get that difference?
But also, I mean, naturally, it's in our physiology that we have these emotions, we have these hormones that are actually belting through us and saying, no, this is the line, someone has just crossed your line, and this is what you have to do about it. And it's the control, it's the control within ourselves that basically you just don't keep going. It's like, basically there is a stop point.
The point of reference as to where that line is.
Yes.
And that's based on the experiences that we've had and the environments we've been in before that. So someone who understands a very reactive environment from a young age, where there is loud volume, noise, aggressive discussion, possible low-grade violence, as they grow, that's their normal. They will draw the line at, well, that's normal. So where someone else who sets the line a lot further away than that, who's experienced loving environment, care, nurture, etc., will have a very different, and it's a bit like the point of reference we have for trauma. If we don't have a point of reference that is relative to our experience, we can't set that and explain it to anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, it's like the instances when people believe that something that you're like the white coat syndrome with doctors and with vets, and you get clients who think that if they're wearing a white coat, then they're God, they know everything, and that empowers them to be absolute arses sometimes. And you know, particularly surgeons, and I'm sorry for those surgeons out there who are nice, there are a few, but you know, it's a case of they very rarely have a bedside manner because they don't have to be, because all their patients are asleep. And it's one of those things too that it's happened a couple of times with me. I was in my scrubs at the front desk at one point. This woman came in, and one of the work experience girlies, who was about 13 at the time, she had been very young, playing about, and she was wearing somebody's white coat, and she had a stethoscope strung around her neck. So the woman looked at me, and then her gaze went straight up to the girl and started asking her these questions. And I just said, I don't know what you're asking her for. She's going back to school tomorrow.
It's also why a lot of doctors, when they come out of theatre and they are going to speak to the family, they don't do it just wearing the theatre scrubs. They scrub out, they put the white coat on, then they go speak to.
Yeah, it's kind of like a suit of armour in a way. And it empowers them to give bad news or good news or whatever the news is going to be. But it's also something that we can look at, in that there are some places where we get really comfortable, we're in a really good familiarity zone, and we are empowered when we're in that zone. Occasionally though, when we're caught outside of that zone and we're caught by surprise, it can look like we've been disempowered. It can feel like we've been disempowered somewhat, being caught on the back foot. But as I was saying, it's like the emotions are there for a reason. And I read something really funny today that just tickled me no end. And it was a picture of Samuel L. Jackson. And it says, just because someone meditates doesn't mean they're not going to go and slap your backside. You know, or paraphrasing there. And I was like, yes, that is absolutely true. You know, because everybody who meditates is not the Dalai Lama.
And there's a reason that people meditate.
Yeah, there is a reason that people meditate. But also, I'll tell you something else. I met a Tibetan nun who was a bit like that. When we were there, and it was a case. I looked at her and went, "Pardon?" So, and then she suddenly realized. She went, "Oh, hello." Yeah, okay, I know. You don't like tourists coming and talking to you too much, do you? So yeah.
But it's interesting you're talking about the doctors in the white coats, and it gives them that power. Is it giving them a power, or is it giving them a mask to hide behind? Is it just another form of a mask?
It can be both, but it's the non-white coat wearing person who gives the power, who actually gifts the power. They're using it as a mask, I believe. I mean, I remember when I got my first white coat, I was just absolutely cock-a-hoop. It lasted about 2 seconds, because as soon as I went past a dog, that was it. But it was, you know, and it's one of those things that it was seen as a mark of qualification.
Which is bizarre, because as part of when I first enrolled at university, I had to go and buy a white coat. I had to buy a lab coat. So I was day one as a student in a science lab at uni in a white coat. So for me, I don't necessarily see that link because of that.
Yeah.
And it's about the environment where that is worn, where it is used, and what is the recipient party's perception of what a white coat means. If you're at a university hospital, you are going to have first year students walking around in white coats. You are also going to have consultant directors walking around in white coats. You don't know which one's which.
I don't know, Dave. You can usually tell the students, because they're the ones who look frightened when a nurse comes along. And they look like they're wearing nappies.
You've got to get past the initial visual to read that.
And you did say that the 13-year-old in the lab coat was the one that she wants to talk to, and not you.
Oh well, yeah. By the time she was finished, I knew that the 13-year-old was the one that she wanted to talk to, because she was absolutely just pulling my chain at that point. So yeah, she almost got the 13-year-old.
Do we, as non-white coat wearing individuals in those situations, do we look to the reassurance of the visual, or are we looking for the information that comes beyond that?
So here's a question: how can you tell when someone's empowered and when they're not?
I don't think it's always obvious.
Yeah, I think you can bullshit it easy.
Right.
Yeah, public speakers do it all the time.
And the whole fake it till you make it, right?
No comment.
As a public speaker myself, I can say,
Yeah, exactly, Leslie.
yeah. I thought that was where that low blow was going. There you go. So no,
I didn't start that low blow.
No, I wasn't saying to you.
There wasn't a low blow in the sense that the audience is the same scenario. We see someone speaking on stage, and therefore we perceive an empowerment because we go, we couldn't do that. We couldn't get up there and speak to them. So we gift a perception of empowerment. Yep. When actually the person on stage is actually doing this on the inside because they don't feel the empowerment to impart whatever it is that they're about to impart. It's perception.
Or is that an assumption of the perception? So for me, I don't have an issue with public speaking. So I wouldn't look at the person on stage and even think, oh, they're going to be nervous, they're not going to be nervous. That wouldn't even cross my mind, because it doesn't affect me. So, but someone who does find public speaking terrifying could be looking at the stage in awe, or whatever's going on, or I could never do that, or I wish I could do whatever the dialogue's going on. Whereas I don't seem to put that filter on it.
And that's about your points of reference.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about empowerment, if we ignore points of reference for the audience, if you like, the recipient of that empowerment, then we miss the connection between the two and the relationship of the engagement.
And the thing with the audience is that they go to be educated and entertained, one way or another, or both. So Victoria, what do you think of this? Being a drama therapist person, and this is all about drama, really, when it comes to public speaking. I know myself that I could be standing at the side absolutely bricking it, and then as soon as it's time to walk on, I take about 3 steps and I become that persona.
Yeah, I'm similar, and I think a lot of people who do drama training, because I know somebody similar, I went to college with her and we did an acting course, and she's now a psychotherapist as well. And in her training, she was telling me that they had to do a bit of a role play exercise, and everybody was looking to her because she was like the actor of the group. And she was like, well, yeah, I can play a part, but getting up in public speaking in front of 20 other students, that frightens me. And I think a lot of us in my course, as well as drama therapists, when we were told we had to do a presentation, it was really frightening unless we were given the option to do a bit of acting within it and be a part. So yeah,
and it's
like
interesting that being a part, you've got a script almost, haven't you? It's the concept of a role play to me gives me the fear. So give me a script and I can wing it with the script and go for it. But don't make me role play. don't make me pretend.
Let's go into the NLP part of it. Let's go into the NLP part of it and think about modelling. Because actually in NLP, a big part of some of the therapies is actually getting someone to either deep trance identify with Erickson, or model that person, or a situation where you feel disempowered and you think, oh, that chap down the road, he does this really well. And as soon as you say that, you think, well, how does he do it? And that I could never do that. kind of thought comes in, well, maybe if you wore his coat for a little while, walked in his shoes for a little while, and discovered how to do that. And that's an interesting thing about the human mind, is that we can try these things on, isn't it, Vicky?
Absolutely. And I really love the idea of an alter ego, and, you know, really dabble into that so that you can step into that other person and wear that for yourself, and then embody it and bring that back together again. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just empowerment of spirit and imagination, it's also empowerment of energy, your actual bodily energy. Because Sue, I'm sure you're nodding your head there, I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. It's a case of when you get into that zone, you're actually like a battery and you're recharging yourself as you're going along. It's like you're a dynamo, never mind.
White line fever.
Sorry?
White line fever.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so white line fever, for those that haven't heard the phrase before, is the white line on the edge of the sports field.
Oh, right.
And when the sportsman is off the pitch, they are one thing. When they go onto the pitch, they cross that white line, it's performance time. It's time to go to work, it's time to do the job. It's what politicians are coached when they are about to walk on stage. That white line is the edge of the stage. When you go on there, you are that persona, you are that presentation. And it's assuming the role that the audience needs to see. And it's that alter ego of the performance that, you know, for the best part of now almost 100 years, public speakers, sports personalities, etc., actors have all worked to, in order to make sure that what they do in the public eye isn't necessarily them going out as themselves, because the private person isn't as connected to the public presentation as they might like it to appear.
I think that that's a good thing, because Sue, as I was saying about the energy parts, the connection to it, it is that connectivity that really makes you go. And pulling that all together is something that can be learned. Yeah? And you coach that for people, particularly with fatigue, chronic fatigue, etc.
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with people with chronic fatigue, and a lot of work with energy. I love kind of the spiritual energy work. It's kind of like it's my fire. And I was thinking, we can all shift, we can all change anything and everything. And when you work on the mind, the body, and the spirit, or the soul, whatever you want to call it, when you work on the energetics as well as the physicals, we can all transform. But sort of thinking about when somebody is truly empowered, I think you can feel it. Someone who is genuinely in their power, without ego, to take the ego side out of it, but somebody who is truly empowered, you can sense it when they walk into a room or when they stand in front of you. There's more than a ripple, but there's just like this blam of energy that you can pick up on.
The shine.
Yeah,
they get a shine.
I actually just wanted to jump in just whenever you said that about feeling it, because I completely agree with you. What popped into my head there was a TV show on there a couple of months ago, actually, about Whitney Houston, and for an incredible singer, this like absolute massive sensation, and yet her self-doubt was crippling. I mean, she was destroyed on the inside, and so I think that there's still that aspect of you can definitely be two people at the one time. You can be this outside person, and you can have the energy, you can bring it, like within that certain area, and then you can come, so to speak, off the stage and be somebody completely different and be flatlined in their mind and their body energetically also. I believe that you can very much be the two at the same time.
I think a huge number of performers aren't they? I think a huge number of people on the stage are these double-sided personalities. So they've got their confident performing presence, and then off stage they are teeny tiny people full of doubt and worries and anxiety and everything.
It's very
Normal,
like
huh?
Oz, isn't it?
Yeah.
The great and terrible Oz, but look behind the curtain and it's just a wee man with some levers and dials and things.
So it's, you can go back as far as Tony Hancock or as up to date as Peter Kay, Robbie Williams. The whole performance side, that public presentation and the private individual, when they are separated and when they're drawn out, as Whitney Houston experienced, it's very hard to maintain a balance as an individual. And the work of therapists of all modalities and coaches ultimately is bringing those two sides back together as close as possible. And it's one of the things that when I was researching for the Psychological Hive, the whole pattern of the most successful companies and successful people is those two sides are totally in sync. They're not merged into one thing. Richard Branson that you see out in public is not Richard Branson that lays on the beach at Necker Island, but they are in sync with each other, and they're not drawn out as two separate entities. And that, I think, is where real empowerment lies, is that connection of self on those two elements.
Kind of yin
When the
and
lights
yang.
are off and we're there in the dark on our own, that's us.
Yeah, and that's one of the first things I find interesting, is that a lot of people, when you say to them, you've got to learn to like yourself first. Only then, when you like yourself, can you learn to love yourself. And it's very uncomfortable for people to actually take that in a lot of the time, particularly here. Because it's not deemed to be something that we talk about. It's not deemed to be something that is necessarily important. What do you mean love myself? Because that is actually an insult in some cases. Oh, that one loves himself that much, he thinks he's chocolate. He'd lick himself to death, kind of thing. But it's that kind of pushing away that's showing how disempowered that person is when it comes to actually being able to recognize themselves. And one of the exercises that I do is mirror work with my workshops, and it's actually getting people to look at themselves in the eyes. Because when you're in the mirror in the morning, you're not looking at yourself in the eyes. You're kind of checking for zits, or you're shaving, or you're oh, do I need to pluck my eyebrows, or but you're not actually standing there looking at yourself in the eye and going, how are you doing today? You're doing well, aren't you? Or whatever. And it was something that I discovered from Serge Kahili-King. This idea, I think his name's Eikentrotter or something, I can never get the name right, but it's in there. It's Serge Kahili-King's Mastering Your Hidden Self. And it's actually talking to yourself. Now, self-speak is one of the most destructive things that we can have, if not the most destructive thing that we can have. Unless we actually teach it how to speak and when to speak. But the self-speak of actually going into the mirror when it comes to our natural health and well-being, we don't do that. And this guy has got this script like, right body, here we go. This is what I expect you to do, and I know that you can do this. Mind and thoughts, this is what I want you to be thinking today. It needs to be positive, it needs to be upbeat, it needs to be this. And that's actually turning on the ignition and revving up the engine of empowerment every single day when you do that. And discovering that, for me, was a lifesaver, quite literally. Mm-hmm. So, just before we drop off the call completely, what, in your idea, what is it that you do to empower yourselves when you need to kind of rev that engine up? If it starts and you get a what are you going to do to kind of, what do you look at? Victoria, let's start with you.
Yeah, if I get that moment of, oh gosh, like, yeah, like I remind myself how far I've came. And if I can get this far, I can get further. And that just gives me that, yes, I can do it again. And that re-jolts the ignition of the engine.
Vicky?
Geez, there's so many ideas that actually come up for me. So it really depends on how it is that I'm feeling and what's coming up for me. So whether I need to take a step back and take time out and do some self-care, meditate, take a walk, you know, play with my daughter, whatever. Or if it's a real mindset block, really consider about why it is that I'm doing what it is that I'm doing, and have a look at the pictures that are in my mind, listen to the self-talk, you know. And we were talking about like these different aspects of ourselves, the different parts, you know, and getting them aligned as well, so that everything feels like aligned and congruent within myself, so that we can kind of move forward together. And yeah, it would probably just be, they would be my main key points as to what it is that I do, but it'd be very much in the moment. I'd lie to myself quite often as well, actually. So if I feel, again, back to the pressure, I'll say, it's okay, I'll quit today and I'll do it tomorrow. And because I've said that I'll quit today, I've relieved the pressure, and it means then that I can actually move forward. So it's given into that resistance. So I'll tell myself whatever it is that I need to, whatever it is that I need to hear just to move forward.
Oh, you manipulator, you.
Oh, absolutely. I love manipulation. It works very well. I think manipulation is very positive. So I thought it was quite funny whenever you started at the start saying that it's a bit negative, but it's not. I think manipulation is actually very positive.
Yeah, everything has two sides. Everything has a
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So, Sue, what about you?
A bit like Vicky, I've got kind of so many different things. I'll quite often have an out loud conversation with myself and keep digging down deeper and deeper into what's at the root of it. And so, you know, and I will just speak it out loud and go, and I'm almost like playing the two parts, like, well, why are you being so hard on yourself? Oh, because nobody likes me. Or, you know, I just have that conversation and go, well, what's behind that? What's behind that? What's behind that? And there's normally something really quite futile underneath it all. And then I'll talk myself back up again, and then I do my my inspiring, motivating talk. So that's one thing that I use quite often. I quite regularly, well, when we could do things, would book myself on to do things that terrify me. It is so empowering. Firewalking was literally one of the best things I've ever done. I booked a holiday and we went canyoning and whitewater rafting. It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I will never ever go whitewater rafting again, but I survived it. So doing things like that, you know, when we can, I think are so good for kind of giving us that, oh, yeah, I did this.
It's a bit like having an adventure every day. It doesn't have to be a big massive one, it can just be a tiny one. It can be something that just edges you outside of your comfort zone. And that, it ticks the box of making you feel good.
Yeah.
Dave?
I think, like the ladies have said, there's an element of what's the scenario here, what's going on, and you know, exploring what's caused that. But for me, I suppose ultimately it comes down to, okay, so if this is it, if I quit now, what's next? What happens if this is it? If I just go, okay, let's throw the towel in. And because of my points of reference and the things that I can look back at and go, well, you beat that and you beat that and you got through that. Why is this an issue? I don't understand why this little thing right now is causing such a big thing when you've done all of that. And that kind of goes, well, actually, why is somebody trying to stop me at this point? What's their motivation? And when I know what their motivation is for me to quit, then it's like, right, okay, let's get in the ring, let's get this sorted, get this out of the way and move on.
Angela?
My brain works differently to everybody else's, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've kind of got two main things. The reset button, I go to sleep it off. I'll be fine the next day, and that usually tends to work for me. alternatively, I will find someone to talk to about what's going on, because I don't have the inner dialogue. I don't have the inner pictures. I've got aphantasia, so I don't have that ability to see in my mind's eye all these different scenarios, and it's nice and quiet in my head. So the way for me to actually process stuff, to actually get that second opinion, so I don't tend to do the self-talk. It is usually somebody else I need to bounce an idea off of, and that tends to work for me in the most part. Sleep's great as well.
Yeah, I must admit that is good. Okay, so the next question.
What about yourself?
Me? What do I
You?
do? Oh, I talk to the birds. I talk to the animals outside. I go off and do a shamanic trance dance, or have a swearie in the bin or something. You know, so
channeling your inner Snow White there, then, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Whistle while you work and all that palaver. Oh no, I do so many times. Andrew, my husband, comes through to me and says, "What did you say? You talk? I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the blackbird in the garden."
Well, if the rest of us start receiving red apples in the post, we'll know that you've had a bad day.
Now,
I was more concerned as to whether
I went from Snow White to being the Wicked Queen, David.
I'm more worried as to whether the blackbird in the garden's talking back to you.
Actually, he is. You know
Mary
he
Poppins,
is.
isn't it?
You know he is. We've had this discussion before.
Yeah, a little bit worrying sometimes. It's okay.
Listen, I walked into a space one time, and there was two baboons sitting up on one of the shelf things.
As you do.
As you do. As I used to. And one of them coughed. And I said, "Oh, Avril, you got a cold?" And she went, "Uh-huh." What else am I supposed to think? I mean, come on.
And Mrs. Doolittle was born.
Mrs. Doolittle was born a hell of a lot longer than that before.
And so what was your next question?
The next question is, how, now this is going to be a doozy for you particularly, how do you feel when you know you are in the zone? How does that manifest within yourself? And I'm going to start with Dave for that one.
Thanks. There was me going, I'm just going to turn the camera off and go and look up some really great answers.
Is that why your camera keeps going off?
Actually, no, that was lighting. But when I feel as though I'm in the zone, how does it feel? It actually feels like complete balance has been achieved in those moments. I'm not having to counterweight anything that's happening. Everything's just working, and the client is receiving, or the interaction is working exactly as I'm hoping it's going to be received, or I'm perceiving it in that way. And I understand that it's as much about my perception of what I'm receiving back and what that energy is that's coming back in an interaction, as it is my perception that that's what the situation is. So for me, it's just a sense of real balance, that everything is where it needs to be.
Sue?
I've expanded is the best word for it. I feel my energy is big and expansive, and it's like being in a massive resolved ball or something, you know. It's just like and really connected to myself and my intuition, and just little flows of excitement, and just it feels good.
Victoria?
I think like what's coming to my mind is I think it was you, Vicky, that said about like a bit of an alter ego. I think my alter ego appears when I feel I'm in the zone, and I almost feel like I can take on anything, and I feel like I'm Superwoman. Like it's just, yeah, I can't quite explain it more than that, but yeah, like, yeah, just I can do anything. I'm like, yeah, I've got this. It's sorted. That's the best way I can put it. So.
Vicky?
It's funny that it's funny actually that you said about superwoman. So because initially I thought the only word that I can think about whenever I get into that flow, into that zone, is like transcend, you know, because like it's like I leave, you know, like I go somewhere else, like I'm nowhere, but I'm exactly where it is that I should be. And I can't recall like any real solid emotions that come with it. It's just you're just in an experience of something. But I'm back to you know, like Superwoman or Wonder Woman. When I gave birth, you know, I done it pain-free. I done hypnobirthing, and it was incredible, you know, like, and that was it was there was the power that come from that was I'm gonna stick with, like, you know, like transcending, like you're going somewhere else, like you just leave your body, but yeah, it's magical. Like I don't think that you can really describe it fully. Yeah, powerful. Yeah, beautiful.
Angela?
I don't do feelings. No. It just feels right. There's no discomfort, there's no doubt, there's no concerns. You just know that it's right, or I just know I'm in the right place. It's easy, and there's none of that noise, there's none of that nonsense, and you're in the zone. You're just going with the flow. At least, yeah. I don't think I've ever actually stopped to think, what am I feeling when I felt empowered? I've just gone with it.
Yeah, it's usually after the fact, isn't it? You suddenly
I don't do the whole looking back feelings
no,
nonsense.
but when it's like when you step back out of that alter ego again, it's almost a little bit. Oh, I was really doing well there. What happened? Why did I?
No, because I don't have that self-talk, so
Yeah,
I'm just yeah.
You have that advantage in that, or depending on how you want to look at it. I think it might be an advantage because my head is extremely busy at times. But it's true. It's one of the one time that I did it in a sporting arena was on the judo mat, and I was doing randori, and I was the person who everybody was queuing up to fight, and I had to throw them all before they would leave, and somebody else would turn up, and it just, for some reason, and I had no idea how it happened. I mean, one of these guys was like 6'4", and he went down, and it was a case of not even thinking about it. It was just there was something in front of me that I had something to do, and I did it, and that was it. And then I did it again and again and again. And it was only when my friend came in to the room and said, "Hi Leslie, how you doing?" And I suddenly she jolted me right out of it. And then suddenly it was me on the deck. And I thought, oh well then, that's that done. But when I looked at it, and my professor was looking at me, and I realised I could have done that all night. It was like no effort was being made. There was no expending of energy. It was just there. It was flowing, and it was because I wasn't thinking about it. The front part of my brain had gone to the back of the bus and had decided it was having a rest, because like the other one had come forward, and there was no point in even arguing.
It's that energy connection, isn't it? To everything that's going on around us, and we're completely connected to it, and the balance between us and what's going on, and the energy fields and everything around us all working at the same time in exactly the same way. And it's you mentioned it's after. There is that issue afterwards when we go, oh, why? What's happened? It's changed. And when we were talking before and thinking about Robbie Williams, he has massive highs when he's on performance and massive lows when he's not. And it's that post-performance blues that when we come out of the zone, it's like free fall. And there's no parachute until somebody else actually pulls the chute for us.
Or you get concussion. But it's one of those things that also, knowing that you can do that, knowing that you are able, your mind is able to go into a space where that is happening, whether you notice it at the time or not. It's that kind of philosopher's stone of, how did I do that? What was the recipe for that? Can I do it again at will? How do I recognise that? And I think that's what we have to realise, is that there is a point where we can switch over, and the tipping point can be something that we can use to do it on demand to a certain extent. As I say, probably would be very interesting to do it 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm not entirely sure that anybody does that, but then again, I do have some reservations about some people that I know. However, they shall remain nameless. However, you know, it's empowerment is all about what we do as individuals, using the conscious collective to a certain extent, being jacked into the universe, being jacked into that flow of energy, and understanding that we can do that, I think, is a massive and amazing resource that we don't really have enough of.
Is it that we don't have enough of it, or is it that we're not plugging into the mains often enough?
Well, I think that one leads to the other, and I think that part of the reason that we don't plug into the mains often enough is because many of us don't know what it is.
But then I think that it comes down to knowing what it is. You know, when you get into flow, I mean, I worked with in horse racing for 10 years, and that was an absolute passion. I was in flow every single day, but I wasn't in it all the time. But when I was connected, you know, and it all comes down to what it is that you truly enjoy. What is it that you're passionate about? Because as soon as you become passionate and you're enjoying what it is that you're doing, you're going to switch off and you're going to get plugged in. So the key is to actually find what is it that you enjoy, and going through your day. And when you find that you're getting into that zone and you come out of it, recall what was it that put you into it? What were you doing at the time? Because these are the natural keys that it is that you're completely loving, and it's going to take you there every single time. So I think you can control it to a certain degree. And until you're sat there saying, get in flow, then it's not going to happen, you know. But
I must admit, with the judo thing, there was a particularly interesting professor of judo that was there that was part of the recipe. But there you go.
when I was doing the research for the book, one of the things that came out about the most successful people was that their flow that we see, that we understand, we see their passion. We see that their whole presentation comes across in a way that doesn't with a lot of other people. And when you break that down, there are certain things behind that. The knowledge of what they do is really, really high. The confidence in what they're doing is extremely high, but their ability to communicate what it is that they know and what they're doing is exceptionally high. So taking Vicky's example about being in horse racing for a decade, where you've got that passion for the animal, you've got the passion for the arena, that knowledge, that confidence in your knowledge and your ability to communicate that to everyone around you, that comes across as really passionate. That's empowerment. That's all of those things. And you can replicate that by honing in on what do you know? How do you communicate that? How confident are you that what you know is what other people need to see? And all of a sudden, you've got an empowered individual that's doing what they love doing. And that beats absolutely every other kind of training model that there is out there, because it's that connection to the individual and their self.
And one place that you will see it possibly more across the board than anywhere else is with children. So with that thought, and the thought that anybody is watching this and is listening to empowerment, about empowerment, and would like to know more about empowerment, have a look at this video and get in touch with us. Leave a comment and we'll get back to you. Thank you everybody, and we'll see you again next time.